tonight I thought I would get back to the series of first relationships that I had. This would be the first important one after my very ill-advised relationship with the guy from Louisville. I thought I would give you a little bit of context here too, because well, I'm going to show you a couple of pictures from back in the day. The first one is going to be from when I was probably 18, and I believe from the way I look that I was still in church. Let me see if I can get this properly. Hopefully you can see that a bit. Looking at the hair and the dress, that definitely looks like I was still in church. Let's see. Alright. And then this one would have been, I believe, this next one would have been, I believe, when I was about 20. I remember one of my friends taking these for me in college. So you can see a little bit of a difference there in hair length. My arms are bare because I'm wearing a sleeveless dress. Got a little bit of makeup on. I might have, I can't tell if I've got earrings on there or not, but as you can see, I was at least somewhat attractive. So, you know, in those days, I never went without a boyfriend for long. Guys talk to me fairly frequently. So let's see, my second job was at, the second job that I had ever was at Burger King. And when I first started working there, I had a manager named Mike that I really liked, always kidded around with me. After I'd been there, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, he got fired. And a couple of months later, I was tired of the job anyway, and I just quit one night with no notice. I remember because a new kid stupidly leaked fryer oil everywhere, and it was going to be awful, and I was young and dumb. It's the only job I've ever just walked out on. So anyway, of course I needed to get a new job then, and I had heard that my former manager had gone to work for Wendy's. So I went to the one he worked at, applied, he hired me, and I worked there with him for a while. Well, he got fired from there too. Well, you know, looking at it now, that should have set off a little alarm bell, but it didn't. And actually, before he got fired, well, I need to backtrack a little bit here. So I was like 19, maybe 20, and still very dumb, and maybe not quite so naive. I had a little experience by this point, but still very foolish, just very foolish. And Mike was 40, and he was married with like an 8 or 9-year-old kid, son. And you know, it's hard to look back and embarrassing and kind of appalling that I had an affair with this married man, because it's something that, you know, I wised up on, and I would just feel bad to do something like that these days. But at the time, I mean, I guess, I mean, I know it's fairly common for girls of that age to sometimes get enamored of a father figure. So there was that, and you could also look at the fact that I hadn't really had a father in my life since I was about 10. So, and he just seemed so, you know, when I worked with him, he was so knowledgeable and experienced and competent. All of those things attracted me to him, and I started having an affair with him. I couldn't see him very much because it was hard for him to get away, but he very quickly decided that he wanted to leave his wife and be with me. And looking back on that now, I think he was just as foolish as me, because really, I mean, 40-year-old man with a 20-year-old girl, I know that works sometimes, but it's not all that common, and especially when you're married with a young kid, you know, that you love. I mean, but anyway, he eventually did leave his wife, and he and I moved in together. I mean, I actually have one of the instances of being the mistress that the husband does leave the wife for. They went through a nasty divorce. I actually got called in to the, well, to give a statement, basically. I wasn't in the trial or anything, thank God, but even that was bad enough, having to go meet with the attorneys and his wife, and so anyway, he had gone from being fired at Wendy's to becoming a pizza delivery driver. He had applied for management at other chains, and one of them actually said, well, you've been fired from the top 3 fast food chains, so no. Because he had, before Burger King, he had been a manager for McDonald's. So then he had gone to vocational rehab, who actually agreed to pay for him to go to college, Western, with me. Well, he went at the same time I was going. Majored in business, and I kind of got like I was, and I kind of got the feeling that he kind of wanted to keep me in his sight. He wasn't a controlling person, I wouldn't say, but I think he kind of wanted to keep me in his sight, because I would see him in between classes all the time. My classes could be waiting for me. So that he hadn't been going for very long before I started losing interest in him romantically. I liked the comfort of being in this relationship and living with him, but I lost romantic interest. I didn't want to have sex with him anymore. And what I think it boiled down to was I realized while he was going to school and looking at how he did in his employment that he wasn't knowledgeable at all. And he no longer had that confidence that he had when he was my manager. And I lost respect for him. I lost that romantic spark. And of course he noticed, and then I cheated on him once. He found out and he broke up with me and moved out. And me, I'm left in this apartment that I can't really afford by myself, and I wasn't really wanting to be single again, you know, and so I basically begged him and wheedled him until I got him to move back in with me, which was a terrible thing for me to do because I wasn't in love with him anymore. I was basically just using him to, you know, have the comfort and security of having a boyfriend and someone to share the bills with me. And we ended up having to move to a smaller, cheaper place anyway, and it just continued to fall apart from there. And I finally, after about a year and a half, just broke up with him and moved in with my brother, and he was devastated, just devastated, and I felt bad, but I couldn't make myself feel things that I didn't feel. And you know, I had also found out that, which was something he didn't tell me until after we were living together, that I believe he was on his 4th marriage, and he had already indicated that he wanted to marry me, even though he hadn't like gotten down on one knee and proposed to me. But he wanted me to be wife number 5. That just I couldn't ever see that happening. But that kind of showed a pattern to me too. I mean, going through that many wives, and how he left his wife and young son so easily for me. I don't know. I think he was pretty torn up about it for quite a while, and I'm not saying that as I was anything that special. I think it's more that he was 40 and had a hold of a 20-year-old girl, you know. How easy is that to come by again? But that was definitely an embarrassing and very foolish chapter in my life that always makes me cringe a little bit when I think back on it. And I just wish that I hadn't been that just foolish, you know.